My grandparents, Ida and Jim Barnes, lived up by the cement bridge on Bear Creek, about a mile out of town. They had 4 sons and a daughter. And back in the 1920s, Granddad was a coal miner. But come the Depression in the 30s, mines went slack and the hours were cut, so a lot of miners had to go looking for other work. And my granddad had to do the same thing and took on a lot of jobs, but the one job he took was working in a limestone quarry, busting rocks for the new state road. And the limestone quarry is, although it's still there, it's all grown in now. It's located off the Friendsville Accident Road, just after you go past the bridge where Little Bear Creek comes into Big Bear. In fact, locals nowadays, they call that whole area limestone, which I hadn't heard before. But anyhow, the memories that my father shared with me before he died were very interesting. He said that during the Depression, his father and he and all his brothers, they did all kinds of jobs. They picked fruit, and they baled hay, they did logging and cut timber, and they worked in mines, whatever they could do to eke out a living. But what he remembers most is working with his father in that quarry. And there was this WPA, this work progress administration program that President Roosevelt put into place to make work for men. And my father and his brothers and his father all at one time worked on the state road, which is now the Bear Creek Road. And my granddad ended up getting a job in the limestone quarry, busting rocks that were used mostly to make that road. And they worked for quite a while, the winter of '36 and I guess into the summer. And my dad remembers the work, I think especially because it was just him and his dad working together. He said that they had to go in there, and before they could even get to the limestone, they had to uncover it. So they had to dig down sometimes as much as 3, 4, 5 feet to dig the dirt off before they could get to the stone to drill the blast holes. And then he said he and his dad would work together. My dad, his name was Harry, same as mine, and but my dad said he used an 18-pound sledge all day long. They worked 10-hour days, and there was a drill with a star bit on the end that cut into the limestone, and Dad would handle that sledgehammer. Granddad would hold that drill to keep it straight, so Dad could come down and really slam that drill. And I guess they didn't have an accident, except one time he did mention, but they would hit that drill down in, and every time Dad would hit it with a sledge, Granddad would turn it a quarter turn so that bit would cut in. And after they got in 2 feet, they would add 2 more feet onto the drill, and they would repeat this until they got down to 4 to 6 feet. The holes had to be that deep for the dynamite, and they had made 10 or 12 of them. So after this was done, my dad said he got the job as a dynamite man. This is in 1936. He's 15 years old, but he's already a strong boy. He's not a stranger to hard labor, even at that point in his life. So he had the job doing the dynamite. He had to tamp the dynamite into these holes and put the caps in there and the fuses, which he crimped on with his teeth, which was not a good thing to do. And then he would cut the fuses to lengths so that the blast would go in order and the rock would cave into the center like it was supposed to. And then he would take off and run like heck to get behind a boulder with his father. And they would close their eyes and hold their ears until the blast and the dust, settled down. And once things settled, the rocks stopped flying around, they would go, and he said then the hard work started. It was all sledgehammer work and wheelbarrow work, and they had to bust up these huge limestone boulders into small enough pieces to run out on the tipple and dump down into the crusher to have them ground to size. He said one day they had worked ahead of time to uncover the limestone to work the next day, and went back about 12 feet, and he had a 30-foot face cleared, and it rained that night, and the whole bank, he said, washed down and covered it all back up, all this muddy dirt. And they said he spent half the morning in there. They actually built a track out of 2x4s, and they jury-rigged some kind of a 4-wheel wooden cart to cart the muck out of there and dump it over the bank of the quarry before they could start drilling again. He said another time, he remembers this pretty well, after he lit the dynamite, he was running to hide with his father, and he got his foot caught, and he just kept yanking it because he was so frightened. And his father finally came out from behind the rock. He says, back your foot up, and he finally heard him, and he got back behind the rock with his father before the dynamite went off. But I'm sure you remember those kind of experiences. So anyhow, they didn't get rich at it. As usual, they got shafted. They were only making, Dad was making 12.5 cents an hour, $1.25 for a 10-hour day. Granddad was making 25 cents an hour. And my dad says it was sometimes 2 weeks before they got paid. So if you ever hike into the quarry, listen for the sound of the sledges and the dynamite and the crusher grinding out old limestone. Hot summer days, we used to go to the old crusher swimming hole on Bear Creek. We'd walk down the blacktop road from the cement bridge, and the swimming hole was right across the road from my great aunt Schroyer's house. Used to be an iron furnace in there back in the 1800s, and the crusher was used to crush the iron ore to be smelted in the furnace. All that's left now are a set of cement steps there, but you can still see them. Anyhow, that swimming hole, boy, that was the place to be when we were kids. And there were 2 huge boulders, and they're still there, I believe. You used to be able to dive off them. The water was that deep. But a big boulder washed into that pool during a flood a few years ago. Imagine that big boulder coming down the creek like that. Anyhow, those were some great days. We used to dive into that pool, and you could actually swim up under those big boulders. You'd have to hold your breath, but when you come up inside, once you stood up, your head was above water, and you could breathe in there. So you could go in there and hide out. Nobody knew where you were. My cousin Norma Lee threw me in that big hole one time when I was about 7, 8 years old. And she was 3 years older and pretty bossy. And when she pushed me in, I thought I was going to drown, but I didn't. And that's how I learned how to swim. I do remember in afternoons it would get hot enough, and of course we were all barefoot all summer, and we'd walk up that blacktop road. We called it the State Road back then. Now it's the Bear Creek Road. But the tar was so hot on that road, places where they added new tar for the patches and the cracks in the road, that tar would blister up. That's how hot those days were. And we must have had tough feet, because I remember we used to take our toes and pop those tar bubbles. And I don't ever remember getting burned. Of course, when you're a kid, you're kind of dumb. But anyhow, great memories.